My name is Akosua Mensima. I am from Cape Coast, Ghana. And what I am about to tell you, I have never said it this openly before. Not because I am afraid of men, not because I am afraid of the church, but because some of the things I will reveal are the same things many of you are still doing inside church every Sunday, not knowing you are exposing yourselves. I am not here to scare you. I am here because I have seen the other side. I have stood in gatherings where people were mentioned by name while they were kneeling in church. I have seen pastors praying while we were already waiting for them spiritually. I have seen choir members dancing in church while their names were written on ritual slates. And the most painful part, most of them made themselves targets. They didn't know. They didn't suspect. They didn't believe it was possible. But in the spiritual realm, ignorance does not protect you. Silence does not protect you. Church attendance alone does not protect you. Let me say this clearly before I go further. I am not proud of the things I did. I am not here to glorify darkness. And I will not teach you how to do anything evil. I am only going to tell you what I saw, what we looked for, and why some Christians were easy targets, while others were completely untouchable. If you are listening to this and you feel uncomfortable already, that is not fear. That is recognition. Because something inside you knows this is real. I grew up in Cape Coast, in a house where church and shrine coexisted silently. My grandmother was known as a spiritual woman. People said she prayed, but what she really did was not prayer. By the time I was 16, I already knew how to sit in a spiritual gathering and identify who was weak. By 22, I had been taken into deeper circles. And by 25, I was being set on assignments that involved churches. Not to burn them, not to shout or manifest, but to observe, to mark, to report. You see, churches are not attacked randomly. There is a system, there is a pattern, and there are 5 things believers do that make them visible in the spirit. Let me start with the first. 1. Oversharing your spiritual life in church. This one made our work very easy. You see, many Christians think testimonies are harmless. They stand up and say, I had a dream last night. God showed me something. I am fasting for 40 days. The devil attacked me yesterday. They think they are glorifying God. But in the spirit realm, what they are doing is announcing their location. Let me explain. When someone stands in church and begins to publicly describe their dreams, spiritual struggles, fasting patterns, or spiritual sensitivity, something happens. Their spiritual frequency becomes loud. and anyone present who is not clean, whether initiated or simply carrying something, can pick it up. I remember one Sunday clearly. It was at a church in Kasoa, just outside Accra. A woman stood up during testimony time. She was shaking. She said, "Ever since I started midnight prayers, I feel attacks in my sleep. I see shadows. Please pray for me." When she said that, I felt a shift. Not fear, not concern, opportunity. Because she had just announced three dangerous things. 1. She prays at night. 2. She is spiritually sensitive. 3. She doesn't understand spiritual covering. That night, her name was written down, not because she was evil, but because she was exposed. People don't understand this. Witches don't attack strong people blindly. They attack loud people with weak covering. By the next week, she started having strange dreams. By the second week, her finances began to dry up. By the third week, her husband started acting strange toward her. And she kept wondering, why me? I pray, I fast. Yes, but you also advertised yourself. Let me tell you something painful. There are things you pray about that should never be spoken in public. Not every spiritual experience is for the microphone. Some testimonies should be whispered to God alone. Because once you speak them carelessly, you don't know who is listening. In the physical and in the spiritual. 2. Serving in church with unresolved sin. Serving in church with unresolved sin. This one breaks my heart. Because these people were the easiest to manipulate. Choir members, ushering department, prayer warriors, protocol teams. They were always the first targets. Why? Because they stood close to the altar, but far from repentance. Let me explain something few people know. When someone serves in church while hiding sin, sexual sin, bitterness, secret addiction, pride, they create spiritual leakage. They look strong outside, but inside there is an opening. And spirits love openings. I remember a particular young man. His name was Kofi. He was a keyboardist in a fast-growing church in Kumasi. He prayed loudly. He fasted often. People admired him. But he had a hidden lifestyle. At night, he visited places he shouldn't. He lived two lives. And that made him very valuable to us. Why? Because when someone touches holy things with unclean hands, their spiritual defense collapses silently. We didn't need to attack him directly. We only needed to push what was already inside him. Within months, his dreams became polluted. His worship felt dry. He became angry at pastors. He started missing services. And one day, he stopped coming entirely. People said he was tired of church, No, he was spiritually drained. The truth is this: if you serve God publicly but live carelessly privately, you glow in the spirit, not with light, but with exposure. And that glow attracts attention you do not want. If you are hearing this and feeling uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is not condemnation, it is awareness. Because the things I am about to share next are even deeper. The next one is the reason many prayerful people suddenly become confused, tired, and spiritually numb. And it happens inside church walls. When I ended the last part, I said something that made many people uncomfortable. That discomfort is important because the truth is, most people who are attacked spiritually are not attacked because they are weak. They are attacked because they are careless with holy things, the things that make you a target. Let me continue. 3. Treating holy things casually. This one used to make us laugh, not because it was funny, but because it made our work effortless. Do you know how many people step into church carrying spiritual carelessness like a badge? They come late, they chew gum, they laugh during prayer, they scroll on their phone while worship is going on. They sit with crossed legs while prayers are being made. And they think God understands. Yes, God understands, but spirits also observe. There is something you must understand. Reverence creates covering. Carelessness removes it. In the spiritual realm, when someone treats holy moments casually, it signals something very dangerous. This person does not value spiritual boundaries. And once boundaries fall, access opens. I remember a particular woman in Takoradi. She loved church. She never missed service, but she mocked spiritual things. She laughed when people prayed in tongues. She joked about fasting. She said things like, God is not that strict. One day, during a night vigil, she fell asleep while prayer was going on. That night, something happened. She later testified that she felt like something sat on her chest in her dream. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream. She thought she was dying. What she didn't know was that during that vigil, her spiritual posture had already been marked as unguarded. No demon forced its way in. The door was already open. Let me tell you something that will shock you. There are people who get attacked not because they are sinful, but because they are careless with sacred moments. When worship is going on, the atmosphere is open. When prayer is going on, realms are open. When the word is being taught, records are being written. How you behave in those moments matter more than you know. 4. Spiritual pride, the most dangerous one. This one destroys more people than witchcraft itself. Spiritual pride. People who say, I pray more than others. I see visions. I hear God clearly. nothing can touch me. Those people shine like lanterns in the spirit, and not in a good way. Let me explain something carefully. There is a difference between spiritual confidence and spiritual arrogance. Confidence is quiet. Arrogance announces itself. I once participated in an assignment involving a woman, a prayer leader in a church in Sunyani. She was powerful, I will not lie. She prayed for hours, she fasted, she had dreams. But she had one problem. She believed she was untouchable. She openly mocked other believers. She corrected pastors publicly. She boasted about how witches feared her. That pride opened a door, not immediately, but gradually. We didn't attack her directly. We simply waited. When she fell into offense with her pastor, when bitterness entered her heart, when she stopped submitting to authority, that was the opening. When she stopped submitting to authority, within months, her prayer life became dry. Her dreams became confusing. She began doubting God. She isolated herself. She thought she was under spiritual attack. But the truth is, pride removed her covering. Listen carefully. Witches fear humble believers. They avoid quiet, prayerful people. They run from those who tremble before God. But the loud, self-assured, spiritually proud ones, those are easy. Because pride blinds discernment. 5. Sitting under an altar you have not discerned. Sitting under an altar you have not discerned. This one is heavy, and many people will not like it. But I must say it. Not every church altar is clean. Not every pulpit is pure. Not every anointing is from God. And not every pastor is spiritually safe. Some altars are mixed. Some are polluted. Some carry strange covenants. And when you sit under an altar consistently, you enter into spiritual alignment, whether you know it or not. I have seen people receive strange dreams after changing churches. I have seen people lose peace after joining certain prayer groups. I have seen people develop strange cravings, anger, confusion, or fear after sitting under certain teachings. It is not coincidence. Altars release spirits. Let me tell you something that will shock you. Some churches are spiritually monitored, not because they are powerful, but because they are useful. Useful for gathering people, useful for influencing minds, useful for spiritual transactions. And the saddest part, many people never pray before joining churches. They go because the music is good, the pastor is popular, the church is trending, the prophecies are dramatic, but they never ask, God, is this altar safe for my spirit? I remember one assignment where our only job was to sit in services and observe who reacted strongly to prayers. Those people were noted because emotional sensitivity without spiritual grounding is dangerous. The truth most people don't want to hear is this, and let me say it slowly. Not every attack comes from witches. Some attacks come from carelessness. Some come from ignorance. Some come from disobedience. Some come from wrong spiritual alignment. Witchcraft only exploits what is already open. We don't create doors. We enter doors that are already unlocked. A warning to everyone listening. If you do these things, overshare your spiritual life, serve God with hidden sin, treat holy things casually, walk in spiritual pride, sit under undiscerned altars, then you are exposed, not cursed, not doomed, but exposed. And exposure is dangerous in the spirit. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. How we identified who to attack and who to avoid. We did not attack everyone. In fact, there were people we were never allowed to touch. Not because they were pastors, not because they were loud, not because they prayed long prayers, but because of something else entirely. And I will explain that, and I will explain that. But first, let me tell you how targets were identified. People think witches sit in dark rooms chanting names. This is not how it works. Most targeting begins quietly. Observation, patterns, spiritual reactions. Here are the main things we looked for. 1. Emotional instability during worship. This one was very important. When someone cried excessively during worship, shook uncontrollably, fell easily every time hands were laid, we watched them carefully. Not because emotion is bad, but because uncontrolled emotion without discernment is a sign of spiritual openness. Some people cry because the Spirit is touching them. Others cry because something inside them is reacting. We could tell the difference. If something always felt drained after church instead of strengthened, that was a sign. If someone felt confused after prayer instead of peaceful, that was a sign. If someone kept saying, I don't know why I feel this way after service, that was a sign. Spiritual sensitivity without grounding is dangerous. 2. People who talk too much about their prayer life. This one made our work extremely easy. If someone kept saying, I pray 3 hours every night, I fast more than everyone, I see visions all the time, we already knew something was off. Because truly grounded people don't announce their depths. They walk quietly. They don't seek validation. They don't perform spirituality. When someone advertises their prayer life, it often means insecurity, pride, or spiritual imbalance. An imbalance creates gaps. 3. People with unhealed emotional wounds. This one was the most dangerous. People who had father wounds, abandonment issues, bitterness, rejection trauma, anger toward authority. They were the easiest to influence. Not because they were bad people, but because pain creates access points. When someone carries unresolved pain, it becomes a door. That is why some people pray and fast, yet still struggle. It is not always demonic attack. Sometimes it is emotional doors left open. And spiritual forces love emotional doors. Now listen carefully. This is very important. the people we could not touch. There were people we avoided completely, not because they were perfect, but because they had something we couldn't penetrate. Let me tell you who they were. 1. Quiet Christians, not loud, not dramatic, not attention seeking. The ones who came to church quietly, prayed quietly, left quietly. They don't show off. They didn't boast. They didn't announce visions. But spiritually, they were solid. When we tried to observe them, it felt like looking at a wall. No openings, no leaks, no access. They had peace, and peace is dangerous to darkness. 2. People who forgave easily. This one shocked me. People who forgave easily were untouchable. You could insult them, betray them, hurt them, and they would still forgive. That forgiveness acted like a shield because bitterness is one of the strongest access points. When bitterness dies, access dies with it. We hated people who forgave, they were frustrating. 3. People who stayed under covering. People who respected spiritual authority. People who didn't jump from church to church. People who didn't gossip about pastors. People who prayed for their leaders instead of criticizing them. Those ones were hard to touch because covering is real. Not perfect pastors, not perfect churches, but spiritual alignment matters. When someone is properly aligned, attacking them creates backlash, and we did not like backlash. Why some prayers don't work? This part will offend some people, but it must be said. Some prayers don't work because the person praying is out of alignment. Not sinful necessarily, not evil, just misaligned. Prayer is not magic, prayer is alignment. If your life contradicts your prayer, the prayer becomes noise. You can shout, you can cry, you can fast. But if you are walking in disobedience, bitterness, pride, or rebellion, your prayer loses force. That doesn't mean God hates you. It means something needs to be corrected. Now listen carefully. This is the most important part. The one thing that made us avoid someone completely. It was not fasting, was not prayer, was not shouting. It was discernment combined with humility. When someone knew when to speak, when to keep quiet, when to walk away, when to stay silent, when to pray, when to rest, those people were dangerous because they could sense when something was off. They didn't expose themselves. They didn't overshare. They didn't move emotionally. They were led. And when someone is truly led by God, interference becomes difficult. If you are listening to this and feeling uneasy, good, because awareness is protection. But let me say this clearly. Not everyone under attack is attacked by witches. Not every problem is spiritual warfare. Not every delay is an enemy. Sometimes God is trying to correct your posture. Sometimes He is trying to remove pride. Sometimes He is trying to teach discernment. Sometimes He is trying to draw you closer quietly. There is something most people don't understand. Why attacks increase after breakthroughs? And because they don't understand it, they become afraid when it happens. Let me tell you plainly, not every attack means you are losing. Some attacks happen because you are progressing. This was something I learned early, and it shocked me. There are times when someone had just received a promotion, a miracle, a breakthrough, or clarity in their life, and suddenly everything became chaotic. Illness, confusion, strange dreams, conflict, restlessness. And they would say, "Why now? I was just doing well." But spiritually, it made sense because progress attracts attention, light attracts observation, movement attracts resistance. But here is what most people misunderstand. The attack is not always to destroy you, sometimes it is to distract you. If a person can be made afraid, anxious, confused, or discouraged, they can be slowed down without being destroyed. And slowing someone down is sometimes more effective than attacking them directly. This part is very important. Why some people get attacked right after prayer. Many people say, "I prayed and things got worse." Yes, that happens. Not because prayer is dangerous, but because prayer activates spiritual awareness. Prayer sees things. Imagine entering a dark room and switching on a light. Everything hidden becomes visible. Some people misinterpret this moment. They think, "I shouldn't have prayed." No, what happened is this: your prayer exposed things that were already there. And exposure always causes reaction. But here is the key. If you stop praying because of resistance, you confirm the enemy's strategy worked. Resistance does not mean retreat. Resistance means something is shifting. What which is feared more than prayer? This part might surprise you. Prayer was not the thing we feared most. Fasting, no. Shouting, no. Long vigils, no. What we feared most was a believer who lived quietly, consistently, and obediently. That kind of person is dangerous because their power is stable. They don't depend on emotional highs. They don't panic easily. They don't broadcast their spirituality. They simply walk with God. And that kind of person creates a spiritual atmosphere that is difficult to penetrate. Let me explain something important. Spiritual power that is loud often fades quickly. Spiritual power that is quiet lasts longer. Some of the most protected people I ever saw were not prophets, not prayer leaders, not pastors. They were ordinary believers who forgave easily, avoided gossip, prayed consistently, lived clean lives, minded their business, and stayed humble. Those people were avoided because attacking them required too much effort. This part is painful to say, but it must be said. Why some people never get delivered? Some people love deliverance more than discipline. They want hands laid on them. They want prayer shouted. They want oil poured. But they don't want to change habits. They don't want to forgive. They don't want to leave toxic environments. They don't want to stop certain behaviors. Deliverance without discipline does not last. You can pray for someone 100 times, but if they keep reopening doors, the cycle continues. And many times they blame witches, but the door is inside. This is the last thing I will say here, and it is the most important. Not everything spiritual is supernatural. Sometimes exhaustion causes confusion. Sometimes trauma causes fear. Sometimes emotional wounds mimic spiritual attack. Not every strange feeling is demonic. Not every dream is spiritual warfare. Not every problem is caused by enemies. Discernment is knowing the difference. And discernment comes from stillness, humility, prayer, self awareness, obedience, not fear, not obsession, not paranoia. The strongest people I ever encountered spiritually were not the loudest. They were calm, grounded, unshaken. They didn't chase battles. They didn't talk too much. They didn't expose their lives. They walked in peace. And peace is the one thing darkness cannot imitate. If you have listened this far, let me say something first. Take a breath. Not everything you have heard is meant to make you afraid. This confession was never meant to create panic. It was meant to create awareness because fear weakens people, but understanding steadies them, and steadiness is strength. The mistake many people make after hearing stories like this is important. The mistake many people make after hearing stories like this. After hearing stories like mine, many people do one of three things. They become fearful. They become suspicious of everyone. They become obsessed with spiritual warfare. All three are mistakes. Fear weakens discernment. Suspicion destroys peace. Obsession blinds wisdom. And none of those come from God. Let me say this clearly. You are not supposed to live looking for enemies. You are supposed to live grounded, steady, and aware. There is a difference. Some people hear stories like this and begin to see attacks everywhere. They overthink every dream. They mistrust everyone in church. They isolate themselves. That is not protection. That is anxiety disguised as spirituality. This is the part many people never hear. Real protection is not noise. It is not drama. It is not fear. Real protection looks like a calm prayer life, consistency, not intensity, discernment without paranoia, boundaries without bitterness, faith without pride, awareness without fear. The most protected people I ever saw were not aggressive. They were stable. They didn't chase revelation. They didn't seek attention. They didn't talk too much. They lived simply, and their lives were quiet. And now, let me say this carefully. Darkness is not as powerful as people think. It survives mostly on fear, ignorance, imagination, and lack of discipline. The moment someone becomes grounded, disciplined, and emotionally healthy, influence weakens. That is why fear-based teachings are dangerous. They keep people mentally unstable, and instability is more dangerous than any spiritual attack. If you forget everything else, remember this. Your mind is your first line of defense. Your peace is your greatest protection. Your character is stronger than fear. You don't need to fight everything. You don't need to analyze everything. You don't need to suspect everyone. You need balance. I am sharing this not to glorify darkness, but to remind you, you are not helpless. You are not surrounded. You are not constantly under attack. You do not need to live in fear. Most people who live peacefully, love well, and stay grounded are never touched by anything spiritual at all. And that is the truth many don't like to say because fear gets views, but peace saves minds. If you are listening to this and you feel unsettled, do this instead of panicking. Rest. Pray calmly. Sleep well. Avoid obsessive content. Focus on your daily life. Stay grounded. Faith is not fear. Faith is stability. And stability is strength.